come together as the great power that we are for the good of the nation and, I think, of mankind. Thank you for your support.
Today, the city of San Francisco is holding the memorial service for longtime California Senator Dianne Feinstein. The country is watching what happens on the steps of San Francisco City Hall. The service itself is going to be starting at 1 o'clock.
The memorial service is set to get underway any minute now. As you just said, Garcia, the service is now invite only instead of a public event. More than 30 dignitaries are gathering for the memorial service. And you're looking live video now from Skyfox, live pictures from Skyfox. The Blue Angels, they're going to be doing a flyover in memory of the late Senator Dianne Feinstein. Of course, she founded the event back in 1981, and it's still a San Francisco tradition, a Bay Area tradition, in fact, to this day. And this flyover will be in honor of her. Now, Christian Kaftan reports that Vice President Kamala Harris's motorcade arrived at City Hall just a short time ago. The Vice President arrived with the second gentleman at SFO at about 11:55. They flew with Reps Barbara Lee, Jared Hoffman, Eric Swalwell, Adam Schiff, and several others as well.
Feinstein was 90 years old when she died last Thursday night. She was the oldest member of Congress and the longest serving woman in the chamber's history. So many people who've been filing through City Hall to remember her are speaking about her as their mayor, because of course that is what many people still thought of her as, even though she went on to such heights nationally. We will bring in our reporter Christian Kaftan here, and actually Greg Lee is also on the ground. You're our political reporter, and a lot of people really thinking about kind of the seed that was planted there in San Francisco and that she kind of just kept in her pocket there all the way to Washington.
Yeah, Andre, good afternoon. As we await this memorial service from beginning, again, the reason that this is now a private ceremony is because of the long list of dignitaries you said. But to your point, we've spoken to so many people this week, both dignitaries and people who have worked with Senator Feinstein. And you ask any of them, what is the most significant moment in her history and her political career? And there's not just one answer. Many people who have known her in her time in San Francisco as a native daughter point to 1978, during that tumultuous time where George Moscone and Harvey Milk were assassinated inside of City Hall, and her coming to power as the mayor and leading this community and the city and county through a very difficult time. Others point to her ascension in the Senate, the 1994 assault weapons ban, and how hard she worked for that and continued to work for its renewal even in the very last years of her life, fighting for that to be a charge. Vice President Harris on this day tweeting about that a short time ago, saying we should reinstate the assault weapons ban. Other pointed to her time in San Francisco in her work to renew and revive the cable car system before the Democratic Party came here for its convention. So there are many times and many points in this career, this storied career and storied life, that you can point to the legacy that Senator Feinstein leaves behind. But we should also mention the woman that she was behind public eye, the woman behind the scenes, the mother, the grandmother. We'll hear from her granddaughter in some of those speeches today in that stage at City Hall, and expected to be some very powerful messages, guys.
Greg Lee, thank you so much. You know, it's that building that he's in front of, San Francisco City Hall. It's the heart of the city, right? But,
sure is.
But that work has stopped today, as I know the city is pausing for today's memorial service. We will turn, if we can, to KTVU's Christian Kaftan. He's speaking with a member of the city's leadership right now, as so many people are turning out to really pause for today's service. Christian.
Absolutely. Guests still trickling in. We're actually joined right now by Supervisor and mayoral candidate Asha Safai. And if you could just talk for a moment about the connection that you've had with Senator Feinstein.
Listen, I was joking with people today saying Senator Feinstein's the matriarch of this city, and she would want us to sit through this heat. She loves to put her staff and the people that support her to test. I mean, listen, the city of San Francisco loved Dianne Feinstein, and the people of San Francisco loved her right back. So she is absolutely one that we carry in our hearts. She's a model mayor. And I know every time she came in town, she put back on her mayor hat, started calling everyone from department heads to mayors to say, get the city in line. And so that's why we loved her.
Well, and it's interesting because you talk about that. This is an office to which you aspire right now as well. You're in the running. And if you could talk for a moment about how that felt, because there are people who say the exact same thing, that while she may have been in Washington, D.C., she was still very much the mayor of San Francisco.
In her heart, she never let go of being mayor. And I'll tell you, as someone that has worked for Mayor Willie Brown, I started my career with him, went on to work with Gavin Newsom, and then you got Dianne Feinstein looming large in the background. You got to have someone in that seat that's on the day-to-day, keeps their finger on the pulse, knows if there's trash in an area, knows if there's potholes that are broken, holding department heads accountable. And I think that's what's missing right now in San Francisco. And I know that Senator Feinstein wanted to see the city get back on track.
Asha Safai, thank you so much for joining us. And I know that I'm making you late, so please, thank you very much, and forgive us for holding you up for too long there. Supervisor Asha Safai, just one of the many San Francisco politicians that we've seen come in. We also saw Supervisor Raphael Mandelman going in, as well as various political leaders, including Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer. We've seen political delegates from the Bay Area coming in and discussing their relationship with the late Senator Feinstein. We also had a chance to talk with one of her colleagues, one of the first women senators who stood side by side with Dianne Feinstein, former Senator Barbara Boxer.
We worked so closely together to convince our colleagues. I'm barely 5 feet. She was like, for me, she was a giant. I don't know, 5'8". I'd say to her, I'll take the short ones, you take the tall ones. We would get it done. And by the time I left the Senate, California was really, we had parity. The money we sent in is the money we got back. But when we went there, it was very different.
And coming back to our live shot, if you take a look, you can see those seats now starting to fill in. We've heard that there are going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,500 guests in all here, getting ready for this memorial service to get underway. We've also heard that the Blue Angels have, in fact, taken off. We've heard that there will be a missing woman formation as they fly over. That missing woman formation in honor of the late Senator Dianne Feinstein. As a matter of fact, there they are right there. You can see the Blue Angels flying over as we speak. The Blue Angels saying that they're going to be flying that missing woman formation, often known as the missing man formation, but this time, of course, the missing woman formation in honor of the late Senator Dianne Feinstein. We're going to wrap at our current location, but we'll continue to show you these shots of the Blue Angels as they circle overhead and prepare for their flyover as the memorial service is set to get underway here. That memorial service was set to start at just around 1 o'clock. Of course, it is now about 1:07, so shortly after. But again, a few guests still filtering in as people want to, again, say their final farewells to the late senator.
Christian Cafton reporting for us live there on the scene. Christian, thank you. As the Blue Angels fly overhead right now, Greg Lee just informing our producer just a moment ago that he's getting word that the event, the memorial, is going to be starting soon. Of course, you know, things like this could run a little long, especially when you have all these dignitaries coming in to attend this event. So we'll see what happens there. So some of the folks, we heard from Asha Safai, San Francisco Board Supervisor, just a moment ago. Randy Shannable joining us live, former KTVU political editor, back here with us. He's covered Dianne Feinstein for years and has been friends with her for decades, in fact. And I want to talk to you about some of the speakers. We have some interesting speakers. President Joe Biden, he'll have a recorded message. But Vice President Kamala Harris, who landed here just about an hour ago to attend, she is there now. Tell us a little bit about their relationship when she worked in San Francisco before she became vice president, before she went to Senate.
Well, she was first district attorney, and San Francisco at the time had a history of liberal district attorneys, as it does now, although there's been a little course correction last year.
Sure.
And Kamala Harris was the rare district attorney, not in California or the nation, but she wouldn't enforce the death penalty. And she said she would, but in fact she didn't. And there was a well-known killing of a police officer, and she got a lot of grief for not calling for the death penalty in that case. And Dianne Feinstein took issue with that. In fact, at the police officer's funeral, the two of them are having an animated exchange about that. Feinstein was very disappointed in it. They did get along, but I would say the relationship was lukewarm. And while we're talking about the death penalty, I think I've mentioned she was more conservative or moderate than a lot of Democrats, especially in the Bay Area, would like. first of all, it's important to remember whether you agreed with her or not. She was true to her beliefs. Again, she wasn't a finger to the wind. She wasn't doing it for political purposes. And when she was running for governor in 1990, 2 years before she became senator, she was speaking at the state Democratic convention and got booed off the stage because she was for the death penalty. Wow. Booed by her own Democrats.
Wow.
She later apparently softened her position on the death penalty. But again, not for political reasons, at least as far as I know. It was because she changed her mind.
Yeah.
Let's fast forward now to some of the more recent years. She announced in February of this year that she would not be running for re-election. This was in the middle of a time that people were calling for her to step aside, to do what's best for her party, for the country. She, of course, had a public battle. She had shingles, some medical complications because of that. Even before that, there were questions about her mental acuity. We sort of saw her aides and her people sort of tighten up the ranks around her. Very little access in terms of, frankly, of reporters. Tell me a little bit about how you watched that play out and the forces that you think were in play.
Well, the forces that were in play were probably all internal. It was probably all Feinstein's decision. I mean, the forces calling for her to step down were vast. Yeah. But former Speaker Nancy Pelosi says she did the right thing by staying. That, for example, a lot of the positions that had to be approved by the Senate, judicial positions, wouldn't have been approved if she had stepped down, because Republicans had said, if she steps down, we're not going to let you choose who takes her place.
Right.
So even though people viewed her saying as selfish, it wasn't selfish.
Well, I don't know what she was thinking, but fellow Democrats who know her well say it wasn't selfish, that in fact she was doing a service to the party and to the nation. And again, that stubbornness, which I initially alluded to way back, that got her so far in a positive, some would say also worked against her, that she didn't want to release her power. But that's not unique to older politicians. It's not unique to older journalists either.
Yes, well, in terms of politicians, Nancy Pelosi came out and spoke in support of Senator Dianne Feinstein at the time when so many people were calling for her to finally step down. And I remember one quote that Nancy Pelosi said was, you know, if she were a man, people probably wouldn't be saying this. And quite frankly, even now we see Congress people that are in ailing health, men, that those issues aren't called on for them.
Well, they are. Yeah. Well, in fact, I think Nancy Pelosi was wrong about that issue. There were calls for elder senators to step down, but we don't hear about it as much because they're from other parts of the country.
I see.
And they're from the other party. So yes, but absolutely.
Well, I say that specifically as recently as Mitch McConnell freezing up, not once but twice on camera, and I did not hear that coming out of the Senate then for Mitch McConnell to step down. He is, you know, the age difference is not much between both of them, but one is a man, one's a woman. That's the one thing I could think of when I understand why.
There is, again, this is no criticism of Dianne Feinstein, because again, I believe that she was doing what she thought was right, and people in her party, at least some people in the party, thought that she was doing right. But there is a difference between what Mitch McConnell was going through. When he is not freezing up, he clearly is still at the top of his game. He could articulate, argue. Dianne Feinstein in recent years, and this was sad to watch, was almost never in public. She would never hold media gatherings, or she didn't have town halls. There would be press releases from her office. And when she came out to vote, people in Washington, I wasn't there at the time, say that her aides would come up and say, "You're voting yes on this one." I mean, she had lost a lot of her strengths, and that's sad. And it's especially sad to me because there's so many young people who may only think of Feinstein in her later years and not realize what a true force she was and how much she got accomplished. And
well, that's true. I will say, as someone that grew up on the other side of the country, even then, over the last 30 years, you hear about Senator Dianne Feinstein. That is the type of force she was. She wasn't only someone that was known. You know, some senators, some Congress people are known in their districts, not very well publicly. Senator Feinstein was certainly known around the country for sure.
Back in 1984, she was on the short list to be Walter Mondale's vice presidential candidate. He eventually chose Geraldine Ferraro. But for a mayor of a liberal city, a Jewish female mayor of a liberal city, to be seriously considered, vetted in the whole works for vice president. That just shows you how accomplished she was, and how popular she was, and how seriously people took her back then. And again, it's sad that some people will only have seen the recent.
It is interesting.
Well, you got to see it starting in the late 70s. So, Randy, I have to say, nobody could fill your shoes, but we do have a political reporter here at KTVU these days.
Yes, you do. A very good one.
A very good one, who does much of the same work that you did for us for so many decades, and just kind of that access to the senator is something that Greg Lee and I talked about in really the hours after we learned of her death late on Thursday, early Friday morning. Greg Lee, if you're available, we would love to be able to bring you back in because, you know, Greg, when I asked you how long it had been since you had been able to have access to Senator Feinstein, you said it had actually been quite a while.
Yeah, and it had been a number of years since I had actually seen her in person. Was at the funeral for her longtime husband, Richard Blum Garcia, and we had not had an opportunity to sit down with her or ask questions or in the press gathering. We knew some of our colleagues in Washington, D.C. did when she returned from that 3-month absence that she took from the Senate, and that's what had spurred some of those calls because there were some crucial votes to, in such a narrow margin Senate, to get judges confirmed and some appointees confirmed from President Biden, and that's part likely why we saw Governor Newsom name LaFonza Butler to replace Senator Feinstein just 5 days after her death. She's already been sworn in. She was sworn in this week. We're going to pan up because we continue to hear the Blue Angels and the sound of their engines above. But certainly today, Garcia, despite what we sort of saw in the last few months of the last year and those calls, today will be about the legacy that Senator Feinstein leaves behind. And much of that message has been about the trailblazing she has done, the path that she has blazed for women to get into politics. We spoke to Malia Cohen, the state controller, yesterday, and she said, the reason that I got into politics was I toured City Hall with my 3rd grade class, and at that time, Mayor Feinstein said, you know, I'm the first woman to be in this position, but someday someone in this class could be the next woman to run. And that was constantly the message that we heard, especially from women in politics. Yesterday, we also spoke to Lieutenant Governor Eleni Kounalakis, and she told us much of the same, that Dianne Feinstein was a mentor to her, that she would constantly be with her, advising her on how to succeed, how to work in this space. And certainly she's had quite the career, more than 30 years as a senator, and a much longer career overall, especially with her time in San Francisco, and sharing those stories and advice with other female politicians. And certainly that is much of the message that we are likely to hear today. Earlier, our Christian captain spoke with Senator Chuck Schumer, who will deliver remarks today, and he said, if I had to use one word to describe Senator Feinstein, it would be integrity. And he said we could use more senators like Senator Feinstein in our Congress today. And certainly that is amid the backdrop that we see in Washington, D.C. with the tumult and the near government shutdown and sort of the chaos that we've seen in recent weeks. But again, saying that this is someone who was a centrist, who was willing to work across the aisle and is certainly going to be known for that as her legacy stands not only here in San Francisco, her hometown, but across the country and especially in Washington, D.C. Guys.
Greg, can we ask you to sort of set the scene? I know there's been a little bit of back and forth over the past few days. The memorial was first going to be inside Herbst Theater behind City Hall. Then it was going to be public, with public invited there where you are. Then late yesterday we learned it was for invitees only. We certainly see the barricade set up, the people seated in the chairs. Are there people, you know, uninvited guests, if you will, kind of lingering around the area trying to catch a glimpse? Or essentially, what is it like right outside of City Hall there, beyond what you're able to show us through the camera?
Yeah, Garcia, I will tell you that the security is incredibly tight. There are several blocks that are blocked off, and the reason that it went from public to private last night is once there was word that so many elected officials, were hearing more than 30 members of Congress would be here today, in addition to the Vice President of the United States. Anytime you have that level of elected officials and dignitaries coming to one place, the Secret Service takes over, and we have certainly seen that security, not only for for the invited people here in the blocks that have been shut off and the sheer amount of law enforcement, but also for us as the media. Our check-in time this morning, just to give you some color, was 6:45 this morning, in which we're left to leave our gear and have everything swept by the Secret Service. And then later you're brought through what is a version of airport security to ensure the safety of all the guests that are here in one place. And that speaks to the level of respect, the level of reverence that these elected officials have for Senator Feinstein, because the Senate canceled their session on Thursday so that members would be allowed to travel to San Francisco to be here for this event. And we have certainly seen them come out en masse, as we've been talking about some of those VIPs that we've already seen arrive today. And again, expecting remarks from Vice President Kamala Harris, as well as recorded remarks from President Biden, in addition to Senator Chuck Schumer, the majority leader.
And we see people fanning themselves and some wearing sun hats. I imagine you're hot in that suit. We'll put you on pause here and break you loose. Greg Lee, again, thank you for your reporting here, as we do expect the memorial really to start at any moment. They're running a bit late, but again, with this large of a group, with this many dignitaries, I can't imagine it is unexpected.
Former KTVU political editor Randy Shanable joins us again. Randy, we also want to note that one of the subjects I wanted to bring up with you was there was some acrimony between Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama.
A lot of acrimony.
A lot of acrimony.
Yeah.
And those two flew here to the Bay Area to sit with Senator Dianne Feinstein. Tell us about that.
Well, you have that partially correct.
Yeah.
Actually, they went to Dianne Feinstein's house in Washington.
In Washington, okay.
At her invitation. She told me she wanted to get them together after their primary battle in 2008 was very, very nasty. If you recall, Clinton was the party favorite at the time. Well established. She kind of thought it was his turn and looked at Barack Obama as this, who is this guy? And kind of resented him rocketing past her. And their debates were very nasty, and it was very contentious. But Feinstein told me that she invited them to her house in Washington. They came. I don't even know if they knew they were each going to be there. She gave each of them a glass of Chardonnay. Says, you go in this room, I'll be out here. Come get me when you make peace. And Clinton wrote an essay in the Washington Post just the other day that said Obama and her, whether they knew it ahead of time or came separately, not knowing the other was going to be there, only came because they had a trusting relationship with Dianne Feinstein. She was a woman of her word. You know, again, she meant what she said.
Peacemaker,
Talk a little bit more about that, the way she had of compelling people, to see her way, to do the right thing. One of my favorite things to do is to kind of go through a lot of old still images, and you see Senator Feinstein through the years. And there was one image, and I forget who the other lawmaker was, but we see Senator Feinstein. She has this other female lawmaker sort of with her back up against a wall, and Senator Feinstein has her hand on the wall kind of leaning into the other lawmaker, and the caption was, Senator Feinstein makes a point to, Senator so-and-so. And it wasn't menacing, but you could tell that Senator Feinstein meant business. Was she a quiet convincer? Was she someone who used force? I mean, tell me how she used her power.
I don't know that her power ever changed any minds, but her seriousness of purpose did. Again, when people would meet with her, they knew she wasn't BSing them. She wasn't just saying something for her gain. She was saying something because she truly believed in it. And so they took her seriously. Whether or not it was her power or persuasion, I don't know. I wasn't in those conversations.
But she never leaned up against a wall and looked at you in the eye and
she
said...
certainly had clout. She certainly had clout.
For sure.
All right, we're looking at live pictures right now. We see Senator Chuck Schumer, Vice President Kamala Harris, Mayor London Breed, and Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi, former House Speaker, standing there. Looks like the memorial service is getting ready to finally get underway. Just a few moments ago, we saw Senator Barbara Lee. She's there, Congresswoman Barbara Lee there. And we also saw former San Francisco Mayor Willie Brown arriving at the scene. But things are looking like at 1:23 in the afternoon, like they're about to finally get underway here in front of City Hall in downtown San Francisco at this hour.
Randy, can I ask for your help? Might that be the senator's granddaughter on the far right of the screen? I think it might be.
That young woman there.
as we see the flags being brought in, just so you know,
I believe it is.
Okay,
Yes.
I think so. I think she might be one of those to speak at the service. So we're going to take a quick pause here because as the service gets underway, we'd like to share with you, we're going to bring it to you live, uninterrupted, in its entirety. We'll not be talking through the whole thing. We want to watch it as much as you do. So we do expect to hear from a number of dignitaries and see really what is a majestic setting. San Francisco City Hall hosting the final goodbye, the memorial service for longtime California Senator Dianne Feinstein. I think the word trailblazer has been used more in the past week, Randy, than I've certainly heard it in my 18-plus years here.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's all this talk about security. Yeah. I was really surprised when they were first even considering having it be a public event.
Really?
Remember, she became a power in politics because of political assassinations in that very building.
That is true. That is absolutely
And you have all these people there in the outdoors. Of course there's got to be security.
Yeah, there's definitely scared. The honor guard up there now getting ready for this memorial service to kick off here. And you talked just a moment ago about Trailblazer. The governor's office in California issued a statement earlier, just a couple of hours ago, says Dianne Feinstein was many things: a trailblazing U.S. senator, a voice for gun control, a leader in times of tragedy and chaos. She was a political giant whose tenacity was matched by her grace. There is simply nobody who possesses the strength, gravitas, and fierceness of her. What do you think of that, Randy?
Sounds like Dianne Feinstein.
Pretty encapsulates her in what you've covered with her over the last many years.
It sure does.
Yeah.
It sure does.
Many people say that City Hall is a fitting place. It's been the site of protests. It's been the site of major breaking news. It's been people get married in this building. It really is kind of the heartbeat of the city. Randy, I can't imagine trying to count how many times you've been there inside City Hall and on the steps covering this protest or that, or talking to this politician.
Last time I was there, it was for a wedding of a friend.
Well,
but before that, countless times.
Yeah.
Countless times.
And we saw so many people coming through. And of course, the senator was lying in state in the rotunda there yesterday. They had to extend the viewing hours because so many people were still in line at 7 p.m. The family said, let's keep it going for at least another hour, and they did. Really a beautiful way for a very personal goodbye.
Again, getting back to her last years, I really do think or suspect that she will be held in higher regard years from now than she is even now. Wow. Because so many people are dismissing her because she was kind of a lost presence in the Capitol for a long time. But when people think back on the things she accomplished, gun control, fighting the CIA when some of their tactics were decided to be torture in the aftermath of 9/11,
and made that report public so the public can read what was happening there.
Those weren't popular positions at the time. She was a brave woman to take those things on.
I wonder if the irony struck you about this is happening at this time while Fleet Week is in town. She is being honored by a mayor in San Francisco who also took over as mayor initially, similar to what Dianne Feinstein, because of a tragedy that struck the mayor's office. We understand that Mayor Breed is talking right now. Hopefully we can listen in and hear what she has to say right now.
The legacy of Senator Dianne Feinstein. Thank you, everyone. You may be seated. Thank you, everyone. You may be seated. Good afternoon. I'm San Francisco Mayor London Breed, and welcome to San Francisco City Hall. Today, we honor the life, the legacy of Senator Dianne Feinstein. Senator Feinstein, that is her official title. It's how Californians and people all over the world knew her. But to us, to San Franciscans, she was Mayor Dianne Feinstein. I was 13 years old, the French horn player at Benjamin Franklin Middle School, when I first met the mayor. Over the years, we had become Mayor Feinstein's band. Whenever there was an important event or activity, she chose us to perform. We played at City Hall and at the Super Bowl celebrations. We proudly wore our band sweaters that she bought for us. And Mayor Feinstein always took the time to talk to us, to tell us how amazing we were, and to remind us that we were her band. I was born in the early 70s, so as a kid, thank you, Mayor Feinstein, for bringing the Blue Angels to San Francisco in 1981. I was born in the early 70s, so as a kid, as far as I could remember, as far as I ever knew, Dianne Feinstein was the mayor. And for kids my age, we just always accepted that a woman could be in charge, that a woman could do whatever a man could do. We believed that. We considered it normal. My mother's generation didn't have that. My grandmother's generation certainly didn't. But millions of girls my age and long after me have grown blissfully free of the yokes our grandmothers wore because Dianne Feinstein wrestled them off, because she showed the way. She created a world where girls like me could be tough, where we could lead. When I became mayor, and even before that, when I was a member of the Board of Supervisors, Senator Feinstein was always there to offer guidance. A few years ago, when I was president of the Board of Supervisors, we had a large ceremony in the board chambers, and Senator Feinstein, as former mayor, joined me up on the dais. As each dignitary or past supervisor walked in, she whispered notes to me. That's Supervisor so-and-so. He lives in West Portal. Ask him about his gardening. When the pandemic hit, Senator Feinstein reached out to me before I could reach out to her. She talked to me about the hard decisions that needed to be made. She told me to focus on doing the right thing, to do what's necessary for the city. Senator Feinstein was always focused on the nuts and bolts, the things that San Francisco needed. I valued her advice, and I will miss her, of course. It was her words that meant the most when I became the second woman to be mayor of this city in the wake of tragedy. It was her advice on how to heal and lead that gave me strength. But I don't know if she recognized that none of the things that she told me as an adult were ever as important as what she showed us as children. Through times of tragedy and triumph, Dianne Feinstein showed us the meaning of San Francisco's motto: gold in peace, iron in war. She showed us a world where women lead, where we lift each other up so that girls like me could follow in her footsteps. She showed us strength and grace, courage and collaboration. And like the old saying goes, you only live once, but if you do it right, once is enough. Dianne Feinstein did it right. She was our mayor, our champion. She was the leader of our band. And I know I speak for all San Franciscans when I say she will truly be missed. Now I'd like to introduce Rabbi Singer and Cantor Barak.
In our Jewish tradition, we call Senator Feinstein that's an American amen right there. We call her in Hebrew an Eshet Chayil, a woman of valor. And as we mourn this loving mother, grandmother, friend, true woman of valor, let us be comforted by the words that we have in common, the words of the 23rd Psalm. For the psalmist writes and reminds us how this senator, this amazing leader, lived. She brought comfort to so many in this city as we faced some of our deepest challenges. She feared no evil as she courageously pursued justice as a leader in the Senate. And she gave us hope that we Americans can always be inspired by the values of democracy, even as we walk, at times, through the valley of the shadows. So may we be comforted as we now hear the cantor sing those words in the Hebrew. And then I'll invite you to join me together, by heart perhaps, in the English.
מזמור לדוד, אדוני רואי לו אחסר, בינו דשא ירביצני, על מי מנוחות ינעלני. נפשי שובב, נפשי שובב, ינחני ומדלי צדק למען שמו. גם כי אלך בגיא צל מוות, לא אירא רע, כי אתה עמדי. שבטך ומשענתך, שבטך ומשענתך, המה ינחמוני. תערוך לפני שולחן, תערוך לפני שולחן נגד צורריי, דישנת ושמן, דישנת ושמן ראשי, דישנת ושמן ראשי, כוסי רוויה. אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני, ושבתי בבית אדוני, לאורך ימים.
Join with me. God is my shepherd, I shall not want. God maketh me to lie down in green pastures. God leadeth me beside the still waters. God restoreth my soul. God guideth me in straight paths for thy name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God forever. May her memory be for a blessing. Amen.
Now we will hear remarks from the President of the United States, Joe R. Biden.
Friends and staff of the remarkable Dianne Feinstein. Within Dianne's very soul lay the defining trait of great leaders, character. Over 15 years in the Senate, plus another decade in the vice presidency, and now the presidency, again and again I saw her character in action, up close and personal. She was always tough, prepared, rigorous, and compassionate. And she always served the people of California and our nation for the right reasons, to make life better for everyday people and ensure America stood for freedom, transparency, and justice at home and abroad. We had the honor of a front row seat to her character, the Judiciary Committee. In that role, among her many accomplishments throughout her distinguished career, she turned passion into purpose, to lead the fight to ban assault weapons, to protect our civil liberties, to strengthen our national security, safeguard our environment, and so much more. Often the only woman in the room, she also mentored generations of women and men alike to imagine a bigger, more hopeful future for themselves, for the country, and for the world. On this day of remembrance, reflect on the many ways that such a pioneer made history and built a legacy that will benefit Americans for generations to come, and that's not an exaggeration. At the same time, our family reflects on the life of a kind and loyal friend. To Catherine, we hope you find the strength and the truth found in Scripture. As is the mother, so is the daughter. And to the rest of Dianne's family, we send our love and hope you find comfort in the knowledge that she and her are now together again. And to the nation today, may Dianne's life be a reminder that the institutions of our democracy do not only depend on the Constitution that governs our nation, which she swore an oath to uphold and defend. Our democracy depends on the constitution of our character as a people, on the habits of our heart and our mind that lie deep within us. Thank God we have Dianne showing us the way by the power of her example. God bless the great American hero. She was something else, and she was a dear friend. God bless Dianne Feinstein.
Now it is my honor to introduce the Vice President of the United States of America, Kamala D. Harris.
Thank you, Mayor Breed. To Catherine, Eileen, Rick, and the entire family, and to all the distinguished guests who are gathered, it is my honor to be here with you today. Dianne Feinstein was an icon of California. She was an American patriot, a giant of the Senate, and a dear friend to Doug and me. She was a student of history, a gifted, and I will add, very generous artist. Many of us are collectors of Dianne's work. And a passionate leader. Simply put, she was a force. To many of you, she was supervisor, mayor, senator, and then chairman. She was recognized around the world as a leader, a standard bearer of America and of American values. Yet, of course, to Catherine and Eileen, she held perhaps the most important titles of all, mother and grandmother. So to Catherine and Eileen and Rick, and to the entire family, Doug and my prayers are with you. And I don't have to tell you, that it is not easy It is not easy when a loved one lives a life of public service, especially a person as hardworking and selfless as Dianne Feinstein. So to you, the family, we thank you for all the sacrifices you have knowingly and unknowingly made over the years that allowed her to serve. And on behalf of the people of the United States, we are grateful to you. As a public servant, Dianne had the courage to take on the many tough fights, even when she was faced with fierce opposition and political peril, and especially when her work was in defense of the Constitution and the security of the American people. Dianne commanded respect, and she gave respect. She was a serious and gracious person who welcomed debate and discussion, but always required that it would be well-informed and studied. And I believe that this city, where she started, had a lot to do with that. To the uneducated here, I will let you in on a well-known secret. San Francisco politics is rough and tumble. Some even say a bare-knuckled sport. And this city requires its elected officials to engage on a daily basis in complex discussions with informed constituents who will raise the most interesting of local issues. No matter if you are walking through the Presidio or attending an event at Delancey Street. And this environment, I do believe, guided Dianne's style of leadership, even after she reached the heights of national and global power. Dianne diligently focused on the impacts to real people. Ideology, substance, not ship, results, not rhetoric. When I was sworn into the Senate in 2017, it was Dianne who welcomed me. She invited me to her Senate hideaway. There, with one hand, she presented me with a glass of California Chardonnay, and with the other hand, a binder full of her draft bills. And true to her mayoral roots, she was deeply immersed in the details of each bill and how each would play on the streets of our beloved state. Some of my fondest recent memories of Dianne are of our time together in a SCIF, a secure meeting room in the United States Senate. Every week, members of the Senate Intelligence Committee would walk into that wood-paneled room, no cameras, no public, no devices. Senators of both parties who would take off their jackets and literally roll up their sleeves, putting aside partisanship to discuss what was in the best interest of our national security. There, we would review classified materials and receive updates from the heads of the CIA, our intelligence community, and the United States military. And God forbid if one of them gave an evasive answer. Dianne, with her trademark grin, would pause, lift up her memo, knowingly at the others of us on the dais, and question in that room, debate and problem solving. And that was quintessential Dianne at her best. So as I close, allow me to turn back the clock 30 years to Tuesday, November 3rd, 1992. I was a young prosecutor at the Alameda County District Attorney's Office. And on that evening, I left my home in Oakland, got in my Toyota Corolla, and drove across the Bay Bridge to the city. I pulled into the Fairmont Hotel, and I walked up to a huge and packed ballroom. There on stage stood Dianne and Barbara Boxer, hands raised in what the nation would name the Year of the Woman. We celebrated an historic feat. We were the first state to elect 2 female senators. And that night we celebrated Dianne, who the next day would take office as the first female senator ever for the great state of California. Fast forward to today, when I again traveled to the city to celebrate Dianne, this time from Washington, D.C., on Air Force Two. Dianne, the women of America have come a long way. Our country has come a long way. And you helped move the ball forward, and our nation salutes you, Dianne.
Please welcome the Senate Majority Leader of the United States Senate, the Honorable Charles E. Schumer.
Thank you, Mayor and Vice President Harris, Speaker Emerita Pelosi, Mayor Breed, Rabbi Singer, Cantor Barak, Catherine, and all of Dianne's family, my many dear colleagues who have come here, and friends. Now, there's a story of Dianne I always thought was quintessentially her. Some of us might remember that years ago, Senator Feinstein injured her ankle while on a morning walk in Lake Tahoe. Now, most people might go see a doctor, clear the schedule, focus on recovering. But Dianne, forget it. It was the week of the Lake Tahoe Summit, a signature event of hers, one she inaugurated back in 1997 with Harry Reid, convening leaders from California and Nevada, the public sector, the private sector, all for a cause near and dear to her heart, preserving Lake Tahoe for future generations. Years later, she looked back on that morning and remembered hearing a bone pop, but chose to finish her day before even thinking about treatment. Turns out it was a pretty significant fracture. Asked how she got through the day, she only offered 3 words. I just did. Now, there are many adjectives that rightly describe Dianne Feinstein. Strong, unflappable, winning, fierce, practical, earnest. But one quality above all stands out in my mind and will forever set Dianne apart. Integrity. Integrity. Dianne Feinstein was a leader of uncommon integrity. She had an internal gyroscope that propelled her, motivated her, never let her stray from a cause she knew was right. I have to be unflappable right now. When she embraced an issue, she pursued it until the end, no matter the consequences, no matter what others thought. Her integrity made her sparkle like a diamond in the Senate. I was dazzled by that internal gyroscope for the first time in 1994, when I closely worked with Dianne as the author of the House version of the assault weapons ban, which Dianne championed in the Senate. She worked that bill harder than anyone I'd seen work a bill, attacking every angle, thinking of every pitfall, resisting every broadside from the NRA, because she knew her cause to be just from her own experience. Thanks to her dedication, her unflappability, her trademark integrity, America turned a new leaf in the fight for gun safety. Working with Dianne on the assault weapons ban was one of the proudest moments of my time in office. From that time on, I not only called Dianne a colleague, but a close friend. And what a loving, caring friend she was. When my daughter first moved to San Francisco out of college that September, I got a call from Dianne. She asked me, "Does your daughter have anywhere to go for the High Holy Day services?" I said no. She said, "Well, then she's going to services with me." There are so many qualities of this amazingly multifaceted woman that I will miss. I will miss her ability to win over doubters and detractors, and there were many, not by putting them down, but with her elegance, her poise, and her piercing wit. I will miss her sheer dedication and thoroughness. She was better prepared and better informed than just about anyone else. I can't tell you how many times Dianne would consider a topic and say, "Let me go home and read first." And she'd always come back with 40 or 50 or 60 questions the next day. I will miss Dianne's talent as one of the Senate's great deal makers. If there was the smallest bit of common ground, she'd pursue it, if it meant moving an issue forward. Even while being so far ahead of her time on gun safety, marriage equality, women's rights, the environment, and so many other issues, she was never afraid of working with those she disagreed with whenever the opportunity arose. Dianne Feinstein was the living embodiment of what the Senate should always be, an institution built on cooperation. Finally, I'll always be indebted to Dianne, not just as a colleague, but as a father of two daughters. Because of Dianne, my daughters grew up in a world that's a little bit fairer, a little more just, and more accepting of women in leadership. Speaking at Stanford commencement in 1993, Dianne confessed that she never sought to be the first woman in this role or that role. What mattered most, she said, was to live life to the fullest and advise the graduates to, quote, "be able to accept challenge, take some risk, but always protect your integrity." And that is just what she did throughout her entire career. So today we grieve. Today we mourn an immense loss for the Senate, for California, for America. But we also give thanks. Thanks that someone so rarefied, so dedicated, and with a sparkling diamond-like presence served our country so well for so many wonderful years.
And now I would like to read a statement from former Congressman and Chair of the California Democratic Party, John Burton. Our country, California, and my hometown of San Francisco has lost a great public servant, but more important to me is that I lost a friend of more than 50 years. She was a force to be reckoned with when it really mattered most, and she showed up for you when the chips were down. She saved San Francisco during its darkest hours and showed political courage during times when no one else did as a United States Senator. She had chutzpah, and I loved her for it. My heart goes out to her family and especially her daughter, Catherine, and her granddaughter, Eileen. Rest in power, my friend, from John Burton, as I said, former congressman and former chairman of the Democratic Party in California. Now, please join me in welcoming the San Francisco Girls Chorus. Now, please join me in welcoming our Speaker Emerita, the Honorable Nancy Pelosi.
Good afternoon, everyone. Dianne, all your life you have challenged everyone to do our best. Now, as we honor your leadership, to celebrate your life and express our sorrow in your passing, living up to your standard is quite a challenge. However, we started with the President of the United States having his plane carry you home. He loved you so much, he said, "My only wish is that I could have been on the plane taking her home." Draped in the American flag, your beautiful landing in the arms of the first responders, lifting you up, Catherine, Rick, and Eileen on Saturday. Over the weekend, your beloved 49ers and our great San Francisco Giants paid tribute to you at their games. Yesterday, Mayor Breed received you triumphantly back at City Hall, where you would lie in state and be welcomed home by the people of San Francisco with music and song. Thousands of people came to pay their respects and lined the blocks all day long and into the night so that the family had to extend the time for people to pay their respects. And this week, it was announced that the Blue Angels, the Fleet Week would be dedicated to you. Fleet Week would be dedicated, and now listen to this. The Blue Angels will pilot a missing woman formation honoring Dianne Feinstein. She flew with them. Can you imagine? Choirs singing, people crying, teams cheering, ships sailing, Blue Angels flying, all honoring Dianne, a woman so strategic and so strong, a lady so gentle, a trailblazing model, and a mentor of generosity and sweetness. Here they come again. While they're coming, let's recognize the members of Congress who are here, the House and the Senate. Please stand so that we can recognize you all. So many. Thank you. You know, from the most vulnerable in our midst to the most powerful persons in the world, Dianne regarded everyone with respect. Thank you, Thank you, Catherine, Rick, and Eileen for sharing Dianne with us. We all smile when thinking of Dianne going to her first civic engagement with Catherine in a stroller. And then, years later, it's what Dianne wants. That's what we get. And years later, with Eileen, whom Dianne called Noodle, in her arms. Catherine in the stroller, Noodle in her arms. Blue Angels in the sky. Dianne drew strength from you, Catherine, Noodle, and Rick, and we all drew strength from her. I hope it is a comfort to you that so many people mourn your loss and are praying for you at this sad time. Dianne, they asked me to talk personally about Dianne, we being neighbors as well as political, shall we say, in the same arena. Dianne loved cultivating people and flowers. She cultivated relationships, bringing people together officially, personally, and romantically. You know that Dianne was a matchmaker. Now, some of you know that. You are here, Jerry Brown and Ann, Charlotte Schultz and George. You know, the list goes on and on. Last week, my daughter Nancy was toasting Dianne, and she said, "Thank you, Dianne, for allowing us to be present in your happy place." Dianne considered it a happy place where she challenged us all. This was at the beginning of last week. Little did we know what the week would hold. Dianne cultivated people. She was loyal to hundreds of commissioners, appointees, and staff, many of whom are here today. Let's hear it from you, all of you. I have a T-shirt that I want to show you, and it says, and many of you have worn this, "I survived Dianne's staff meetings." And Dianne cultivated flowers. She loved flowers, to grow them, to show them, to paint them, and share them on drawings and on mugs. Anybody here have a mug, a Dianne mug? And as neighbors, Paul and I always knew, because we could see from our window, that Dianne had the most fabulous hydrangeas. As neighbors and friends, Dianne and I took pride in working together for California and for our values. I'll always remember this one time in 2015 in the United States Capitol. Dianne and I expressed our concern to President Xi about the Chinese government's abuses of the Tibetans and disrespect for His Holiness the Dalai Lama. When Dianne spoke, people listened. People have asked me, what is the best advice I ever received from Dianne? Well, there's many. We all have gotten great advice from Dianne, but the most constant advice I ever got from her, again and again, was, "Nancy, you don't always have to be the one going out on the attack. Let some other people do that from time to time. Why don't you do that?" I don't know. Madam Vice President, thank you so much for honoring us with your presence today and honoring Dianne, your good friend. and again, official associate. It's an honor that you are here. Leader Schumer, you have spoken so beautifully about Dianne, our senator's accomplishments. Thank you. Thank you for your beautiful remarks the morning of her passing and all that you have done since then to honor her memory. And she has a lasting legacy. From the cable cars, the breast cancer stamp, to the assault weapons ban, to Team Tahoe. Any Team Tahoes here? Team Tahoe. The list goes on and on, from the U.S. Capitol back to San Francisco, where Dianne Feinstein is our forever mayor. Forever mayor. Dianne was such a commanding mayor for 10 powerful years that when her term was up and some other people started to run for mayor, including some men, school children were saying, can a man be mayor of San Francisco? I guess. Dianne left. Madam Mayor? There we go. Dianne left us as she had lived. She left on her own terms. She was proud to confirm more than 140 Biden judges. And Chuck can attest that she walked onto that floor last Thursday, which would be her last day, and so she walked onto the floor and voted to advance legislation to keep government open for the people. This is just the beginning. All weekend, it's Fleet Week dedicated to Dianne. Flyovers all weekend. She would like it like that. The president began his beautiful tribute earlier in the program with a poem by Emerson. I will end with a song suggested by Nancy Corinne, my daughter who loved Dianne so much, American Anthem. Doesn't this sound like Dianne? Let them say of me, I believed in sharing the blessings I received. Let me know in my heart when my days are through, America, America, I did my best for you. Dianne Feinstein. Dianne, we know you did your best for America. May you rest in peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Now, I told the Blue Angels just 2 times, but now they're just giving us some more energy. We're excited and grateful for the senator's legacy, and we know that they loved her as well. So at this time, I'd like to welcome, for the final remarks of the day, Senator Dianne Feinstein's granddaughter, Eileen Mariano.
Thank you, Mayor Breed, and thank you to everyone in the audience for making the journey out here today and for braving the heat. It is an honor to my grandmother. My grandmother will be remembered by those in San Francisco, California, and the United States for so many reasons, a number of which have already been mentioned. Saved our beloved cable cars, created the iconic Pier 39, and fought for the LGBTQ community during the height of the HIV/AIDS epidemic. For Californians, Senator Feinstein established Joshua Tree in Death Valley, preserved beautiful Lake Tahoe, modernized California's water system, and protected California's deserts. For those across the country, Senator Feinstein will be remembered for banning assault weapons, creating life-saving Amber Alerts, and rooting out and banning torture. She will also be remembered across the country for shattering the glass ceiling. She showed young women everywhere that they too can be leaders, that they can make an impact, and that they deserve a seat at the table. But to me, she will be remembered as the most incredible grandmother. Minutes after I was born, at the hospital, she exclaimed to my mom and dad, "Oh wow, she looks just like me. You should change her name to Dianne." From then on, she and I were extremely close. We had an effortless connection. When I was a toddler, we could amuse ourselves for hours playing hide and seek. I would laugh and laugh and laugh when she would find me hiding. I would spend nights at my grandmother's house whenever she was home in San Francisco. She taught me to play chess, although she hated losing. We would pick flowers from her garden and draw them together, although only her drawings were worth making into prints. She would give me haircuts at home in the kitchen, much to my parents' dismay because my hair always turned out crooked. And she loved teaching me about San Francisco's history, why there are bricks instead of asphalt on some of our city's steepest hills, what Sutro baths used to look like before the fire, and the best places in the city to view the bay. At the end of the day, we would curl up close on the couch and watch a movie or our favorite TV show. And when it was time to go to sleep, she would say goodnight, and she would always sing me the song, "You Are My Sunshine." My grandmother was my biggest cheerleader. She was an unwavering support system. She never failed to tell me how proud she was of me. I could bring to her any worry or fear, and she always had a good solution. She was a constant and unyielding source of love. As I got older, she started sharing more of her infinite wisdom. She taught me lessons that I will carry with me forever. Work to your long suit, she would say. Do something that you can do for your entire life, something that energizes you, something that inspires you, and something that makes the world a better place for the people who live in it. Boy, did my grandmother do that. Earn your spurs, she said. You have to work hard, put in the hours, and work your way up. My grandmother did that too. It doesn't matter how many times you lose. You pick yourself up, you dust yourself off, and you keep going, no matter what. That, and she would also say to me, if you ever go out of town, no matter where you're going, it doesn't matter if you're going to a city or the desert or a beach or the mountains, always pack a black pantsuit. There is no occasion to which you can't wear a black pantsuit. So to my grandmother, I promise to always work to my long suit, to earn my spurs, to keep going no matter what, and to never forget my black pantsuit. Your family loves you. We are so proud of you. We miss you, and you will always, always be my sunshine.
Thank you, Eileen. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you to your entire family, to so many of Senator Feinstein's staff and colleagues from the Senate, people who have come far and wide. Thank you to all of San Francisco for your love and your support of Senator Feinstein and her family at this time. Her legacy will continue to live on in everything we do to continue to lead this city and to lead this country. This has been an extraordinary service, and we appreciate especially our Vice President for being here to represent our country, to demonstrate the importance of what Senator Feinstein means, not just to San Francisco and the state of California, but the entire country. It is so meaningful to be here with each and every one of you, so many elected leaders and legends and people who helped lead this city for many, many generations. You are all in our hearts and our prayers as we continue to mourn Senator Feinstein, but she will always be remembered in so many corners of this city, in so many corners of this state, and in corners of this country. And at this time, we'd like to welcome back the girls' chorus for a final song in honor of our great Senator, Dianne Feinstein. Thank you. Thank you again, everyone, and thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you being here on behalf of Senator Dianne Feinstein's family. We want to thank you all for joining us here today.
All All right, you've been watching our special coverage here of the memorial service for the late Senator Dianne Feinstein. Mayor London Breed just wrapping it up just a moment ago, along with a closing song from the San Francisco Girls Choir. We heard from Senator Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi. We also heard from Vice President Kamala Harris, who said she was a student of history, a gifted, and I will add, very generous artist. Many of us are collectors of Dianne's work. We all know that Dianne was a painter as well, or some people may not know that, but she did do that in her pastime, and she gave her paintings away as gifts to people whom she knew. This service was more of a recognition of the accomplishments in her life, more so than it was a funeral service. This is a memorial remembering everything that she has done, all that she's contributed to San Francisco, the people of San Francisco, and the people around her, and those she's inspired in the world of politics.
Senator Feinstein's family will now attend a private burial service for her. So this really is the last time we'll see people gathered together, remembering, really rejoicing in the legacy that was planted at San Francisco City Hall and will remain on this country for decades, likely longer than that to come. We heard from the San Francisco Girls Chorus singing, of course, San Francisco there at the very end, and the Impossible Dream sort of in the middle of the program. It was nice to hear from the elected leaders. Frankly, we hear from them quite often, and for me at least, it was hearing from the senator's granddaughter, Eileen Mariano, that was sort of the nicest surprise, if you will, in the afternoon. Hearing things about, at-home haircuts, hide-and-seek games, sleepovers with her grandmother, a very, very personal, intimate side that we don't often hear about, certainly when it comes to people in high places in politics. So it was nice to be able to hear from her, certainly a young voice in the city who has been impacted by her grandmother, but also from the legacy that her grandmother leaves. Certainly she was the first female San Francisco mayor. Today's program was presided by the second female San Francisco mayor. Think about all the years that have passed since then.
Yeah, the coincidences that wrap around here are certainly unique. Of course, it's happening as Fleet Week is underway, something she started. She was represented here by the first female mayor, second female mayor of San Francisco. As you said, this is a woman of many firsts. Even when she was in the Senate, she has made history throughout her entire 90 years of life, and she continued to work until the very end when she passed away last Thursday, casting a final vote to try and keep the government open at that time before she passed away that night. We learned about it on Friday morning. The senator will certainly be remembered here. Again, now that this is over, we understand that the casket that was in San Francisco City Hall in the rotunda there, where folks were coming by to pay their final respects, that has already been moved out. And now the private funeral services with family and loved ones will commence right after this. That, of course, is being kept private. That is not a public event, even smaller than the event that you saw now. But we had several Congress people, Barbara Lee, Eric Swalwell, just some of the few that we're seeing coming in and attending this event. Willie Brown, of course, former San Francisco mayor, also part of the gathering here on the sweltering hot day in front of City Hall to remember the late Senator Dianne Feinstein.
And now there has to be sort of an unwinding of all the preparations that were made over the past couple of days for today's memorial event. So just keep this in mind, of course, the area around and surrounding San Francisco City Hall, directly in front, but for a couple of blocks around the building as well, is pretty heavily blocked off. We have been hearing from our reporters, Christian Captain, Greg Lee, others throughout the morning and afternoon hours. So there really is no absolute need for you to be in the area. You might want to stay away. It's certainly not going to be business as usual. So again, it was a sweltering hot day. We saw people fanning themselves with programs, and of course, every time we heard those Blue Angels roar up above, we all know they can be loud, but as